Hi everybody. You caught me in my robe. Stay tuned though, because I've got an awesome new pattern to share with you. Hi everybody. My name is Chris and this is Sewjourns. Welcome back to the sewing room. So yeah, I have a new pattern to show you today. And this is one of my favorite photo shoots ever because it was so comfortable and so wonderful. So today I have for you the Compose Robe. This is the newest pattern by Love Notions. There are two separate patterns, one for ladies and one for kids. But I tell you, it also works for your guys. And I'm going to show you some shots here of my Mark wearing this robe. You know, fabric choice. It's all about fabric choice. And Love Notions patterns come in the full size, as does this Compose Robe. Comes in the full size range. That's extra small through 5X. So all you have to do is measure the chest of your guy and go by that measurement. It's a robe. There's a lot of ease. It really folds over quite a bit. Two lengths to this robe. The knee length robe, which actually comes below the knee. And although you can't see it here, I will show you some pictures. I'm wearing the calf length robe. And for me, it comes way down to my mid-calf, which makes it warm and cuddly and wonderful. It's an easy sew, and it works for knit fabrics or woven fabrics. This one here to my right is actually a stable knit. It's a double knit. It's two-sided. And this one here that I'm wearing is brushed velour on one side, and it's toweling on the other side. I love this. This is so awesome because it feels so comfortable and soft against my skin, especially this band that's folded over two widths, so I get that softness here. And the other side is toweling, so if you're getting out of the tub, the shower, the hot tub, let me tell you more about the pattern. As I said, it's the full size range from extra small to 5X, calf length or knee length. It's a long sleeve robe, but certainly if you're doing a summer robe, you can shorten the sleeves the regular way you would. It comes with optional patch pockets. I've embellished my pocket here with a little bit of lace for a feminine touch. It's a nice place to add your personality. I've also added that lace to the bottom of my sleeves because I could. It has a band around for a collar, or you can choose the hood. There's also a hood option, which makes it cuddly and warm and lovely, especially if you're in a cold area. And then the hood also has a band around it. Like I said, it's good for knit fabrics or woven fabrics. So you could choose to make a fancy robe depending on your fabric. You could choose satin or chiffon if you wanted to. You could choose velour. You could choose a knit. The pattern suggests that if you use a woven to go down in size. And I'm just going to say that I didn't find that that was necessary. Perhaps if you're doing satin and you want a little sexy, open style, you could. But I honestly feel like there was no need to. These are both the same size. This is a knit, this is a woven. I stuck to my regular size for Love Notions. Extra large here, I graded out one size for the hips. I'm perfectly comfortable. I love the fit, I love the feel. This robe is awesome, whether you choose the collar or the hood. Now, there's a bonus with this pattern. When you purchase this pattern, and this pattern is on sale today during release week for 25% off, the links are right down in the description box below me. And that sale runs usually for about a week. So at 25% off is the lowest price you're going to see for a minimum of 6 months. Because when Love Notions has their next site-wide sale in the new year, the new release is generally excluded from that. And it won't be featured again for at least 6 months or more. So pick it up now so you're ready for all the weather. When you purchase this pattern, it comes with a free hair wrap pattern. You know, you've seen these on TV, has the button at the top and the little twist at the bottom. And I'll show you some pictures of me. How people look gorgeous modeling these hair wraps, I don't know, but here you go. That's included with your pattern. Today, not only will I have a lot of sewing to show you today, but in the Sew You Can segment, I want to show you this. So this pattern has loops on each of the side seams like I told you about. And the loops are made from the same fabric, which is great if you do not have bulky fabric. Now for this knit, it was fine and it actually blends in really well, and for a guy it looks great. Okay, this fabric is very thick like I told you, and I like feminine things. I like feminine features, and so I made a little tiny loop here out of matching thread. I like that look. It disappears. You don't see more bulk. I certainly didn't want to add more bulk to this. And so you've seen these ties perhaps on fancier robes, silk robes, satin robes, because they're delicate. You've even seen them on dresses, I'm sure, because you really don't see them when you're looking at the dress on someone. So I have a quick tutorial to show you how I did this. Now I just want to mention that my videographer, my husband Mark, had some shoulder surgery, and so I was taping that segment on my own. You can see what I'm doing. I hope it's a good explanation. In the very beginning where I start to create the loop, it's like into it a little bit, I noticed that my arm was in the way for the first two loops. Not for the beginning on how to set it up, but hang in there past that part, because then a different angle comes in and you can see what I am doing. If some of you want me to redo that as soon as he's out of the sling, we'll be able to do that. I have a lot of sewing to show you today. But what I have to show you besides this is I've done a hack on this robe. You're going to get your money's worth out of this robe. I'm going to show you how you can create this. I did a hack for a swimsuit cover-up from the Compose Robe pattern. Isn't it cute? I'm thrilled with this. I'm thrilled with it. It's just how I pictured it in my head. This is the hooded version. So I show you how to do the hood. But look, I turned it into a dolman. You know, when you're throwing on a swimsuit cover-up, it's hot out. You don't need to have a set-in sleeve. You want freedom of movement. You want airflow. So I show you how to turn the Compose Robe pattern into a dolman, and you can do it. I've also added a waist drawstring here. So super cute. I made a couple of little changes, but I walk you through this entire tutorial so that you can sew your swimsuit cover-up. Do you have an indoor pool? Do you have a hot tub? Maybe you take swimming lessons. Perhaps you live in the Southern Hemisphere or Florida or somewhere really warm. Are you in the Caribbean? Where you can get use out of this right away, but aren't these awesome gifts? Think about that this time of year. Robes for the family, be so cute in Christmas fabric or whatever. Valentine robe for you and hubby, that would be really great. And a swimsuit cover-up. So stay tuned for my lesson on these little delicate loops and a full tutorial on how to turn your Compose robe into a swimsuit cover-up. Okay, so let's get into how to make this little braided or knotted belt loop. I really like this rather than do what the tutorial says, which is to make your belt loop out of your fabric. My fabric is a double thick fabric. It's beautifully plush and lovely on this side, and then it's toweling on the other side. It's very thick, and I feel like it makes the robe look really chunky. And you'll often see this sort of little loop on your fancier, softer chiffon satin robes. And I wanted to do it on this one as well. So I've already done one here. The loop begins at 7 inches from the intersection at the armpit. So exactly 7 inches down, and it's about 2 inches long. So I flipped it around to the other side where I have it marked 7 inches down from that intersection to 9 inches. I have a decent sized big needle with a big eye, and I have my thread folded over and then looped through again, so it's 4 strands. So it's double looped through, knotted at the end. Okay, so that's knotted at the end, and it's a good long length. All right. So now what I want to do is now we're doing this right on the side seam, so you can do it last, which is great. So now I'm going to come under here, and I'm just going to bring it up right at that pin in the side seam. And I'm going to do it again because I want it to be nice and secure. I can actually remove this pin now because that was just my starting point, and having that out of the way will be very helpful. I'm going to bring that back down through the side seam and under, being careful it doesn't knot up. I'm going to bring it up one more time in that same place. And I can see that that's right there. Okay, so now we're secure. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to come up at that second pin where the loop is going to stop, the belt loop is going to stop, right in the side seam, and it's right there, right where that pin is. And I'm going to pull that all the way through. All right, now I can get rid of that pin. All right, now I just want to make a knot at this place, so I'm going to bring this through, and I'm going to loop it around a couple of times, 3, and pull that through so we get a nice good knot, and then pull it in the opposite direction, and that will tighten it. Is take this back to the starting point now. Look for my threads right here and bring it up through. So now I'm creating a loop on the top, and you have to figure out how high you want it. So I take my belt and I put it in, and then I pull it to where I think would be good. I need to leave enough room to get the belt in and out to move it around, but not so much that it's all this extra. So I think a finger's width is really good for this scenario. So I want it to be about there, about here. So I'm going to take my needle and slide it through that loop that I made there, and put a knot right there. So now I have my loop. Now what we're going to do, here's my loop. Now what I'm going to do is run like a series of little tiny knots that will in essence braid these 4 strands together and make a tight little loop. So what you'll do is take your needle under there, and now you've created another loop, and then run it through that loop. And then work that knot all the way down the bottom, and then pull it towards you, and that will tighten it. And you're just going to keep doing that. So you're going to go under, and then so now you're just going to keep going and make a bunch of knots. So you're going to go under the 4 strands, and then you see there's a loop there. You're going to go through that loop, and you're creating a little knot, which is you're going to just basically put on top of the knot you just made, and then tighten it. And you just continue to do that. So you go under the second loop. You've created a knot. You're going to just pull it so it sits in front of that other knot, and then pull it tight. And that's looping these strands all together. So under, the direction doesn't matter as long as you're going under both loops. And then you're creating a little, and there's 4 loops here, so if they need a little coaxing, you just pull on each one. There we go. And that will make another knot, and you just keep going. I'll do a few more here for you. Now it's starting to braid. Can you see that? Yeah. Under this loop, and through this loop. Pull that and keep going. 1 and 2. There's a couple different ways I've done these. This is an easy method, so showing you this. And stacking those knots on top of each other and tying them tight. All right, I'm going to finish braiding this loop and I'll come back and show you the finished loop. So here I've finished braiding or knotting our delicate little loop, and this will be so nice for the belt because it'll hold the belt, but it's not going to be a focal point and it's not going to be bulky. Then I just brought the needle down into the side seam to the back. You can see my serge seam, and I'll just, however you like to tie this off, but I'm doing it right into the seam there. And I'll loop this round a couple of times. There we go. I always say a couple, but I mean 3. And then pull this through, pull it one way, then the other for a nice tight knot. And if you want to, you can even knot it again. Comes right through. And let me just show you one other thing I did. Because we're using these delicate loops, which I really like the look of, I wanted to secure my robe on the center back seam. This pattern has a center back seam for shaping. I like a center back seam. And the knot has a center back seam because, excuse me, not the knot, the tie has a center back seam because you cut 2 on the folds, sew the short ends together. So it's perfect. All I did was come from underneath the robe in that seam, and I sewed this tie onto here, onto the robe at the center back seam. It's completely invisible because I went through both seams. But now these loops are taking no stress at all because this is taking it up. Let's get into the pattern alterations we needed to make in order to change this compose robe into a beach cover-up. And it's really not many. The first thing I did was I cut it on the knee length line. So we have it cut on the knee length line. Then I decided that after trying on the knee length robe that I really wanted my swimsuit cover-up to come just to the top of the knee or the middle of the knee, but not below it. So I've decided to shorten it by 1 inch. So I made a line here 10 inches from the bottom, marked 1 inch, cut it and folded it up. So now I have it 1 inch shorter. Okay, so we're going to create a little extension here to make a vent. So on the pattern, let me pull this down a little, make sure you're working on the arm side, the side seam, for a 6-inch vent. So what I did was I marked the hem allowance here. So the vent will start here and go all the way down, but I marked the hem allowance. So then I measured 6 inches up and I made a mark. I also put a star. This will serve us later when we are sewing. And then I made a mark another 1/2 inch above the 6-inch mark. I added a piece of paper behind here and I taped it on, and I wanted my vent to be 5/8 of an inch wide. So I drew a line 5/8 of an inch from the side. And then you just want to go down here on an angle in order to create your vent because we're going to fold that back. So I made a mark at this star, and then I angled it right here. So you can see just an angle down here from the upper mark to this mark, which is 1/2 inch apart, and then straight down. So here we have our vent. What you do to the front, you also do to the back side seam. Let me pull that over. Here's the back piece, and I've done the exact same thing. I've also shortened the back piece by 1 inch at the same place. So now they both match, they're both the same length, and we have a side vent on each piece. Now we're going to deal with the hood band. The hood band is a very long pattern piece here. Goes down here a little bit longer. We need to shorten the hood band 1 inch because we shortened the length of the entire robe 1 inch. So I did the same thing. 10 inches up from the bottom, which is where I shortened the bodices, I just drew a line, cut it, and brought it up 1 inch. So now this hood band, which goes along the inside bodice, up and around the hood and down. Now let's deal with the sleeve. We are going to turn this into a dolman style because you really don't need set-in sleeves or really want set-in sleeves for a cover-up. A cover-up is usually loose fitting and flowy because it's hot and you just want to be able to throw it on over your bathing suit. So I only want short sleeves, of course. So I decided that I wanted 8 inches down from the arm side. A note here. After I constructed my swim cover-up, I realized that 8 inches was too long for my dolman sleeve. So I shortened it by 2 inches to 6 inches. So I would just go ahead and do that now. Here I have my sleeve cut where I've determined the length that I would like, and I folded it in half. It's simple. So I have my front piece with the arm side, and I have taped a bunch of scrap paper, filled in the arm side, added a little extra above, and a piece underneath. You only need to come down to about the waist, okay? Here is our folded over pattern piece for our sleeve. This is the front. You're going to take this pattern piece and you're going to line it up right there with the notch at the shoulder. You're just extending this shoulder. You've seen before dolman sleeves, they just extend all the way down. And this will be the length, how long we want our sleeve to come down. And this is the proper width because this is the right size for our pattern. And then what I've done, and you see your sleeves coming over top of that, it's not a problem. I've taken my quilting ruler along this edge, I put a few pattern weights, and I drew a line onto this scrap paper, down the sleeve and across your short sleeve length. Now what you want to do is create that dolman curve where it comes up from the waist in a curve and meets the end of the sleeve. You can freehand this. You can trace a dolman pattern or a dolman sleeve that you already own. I just winged it. Just drew that curve so it comes right nicely into your side seam and down. When I take this away, here we have our dolman style shape. So all I'm going to do now is cut along this red line. Everything's taped on there and it will stay attached to our piece. What we do to the front piece, we need to do to the back piece. Okay, now that we have our pattern completely prepared, this is the back, and I've done the dolman, and here it wasn't quite deep enough, so I just added more to make that curve the way I needed it to be. And I have my hood band back here. It just fits on the width here. This is folded over so I can cut mirror images. And then I'll have enough to cut my front and the additional hood band plus the hood. So that's all the pieces you need, plus your pocket piece. If you're going to be putting pockets on, you can put your pocket piece right here and cut that out. Okay, just as the pattern instructions tell us, we're sew down the seam down the center back. The only difference is, of course, we have a dolman sleeve now. So this is the back piece, which I've sewn down the center. Now I'm going to put that aside. Okay, here's what we have. We have our back bodice and our 2 front pieces, which are clipped together at the dolman sleeve that we created. And then they are also finished. Each one was finished separately on the end, clipped all the way down to the bottom on both sides. I'm going to use my serger to serge the dolman edge, and then I'm going to switch to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance down the side until we get to that mark about a 1/2 inch down into the vent. We're going to stop there and back stitch. Do that on both sides. Side seams are sewn down and pressed open. We sewed into the vent a 1/2 inch and then I pressed those back. Now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew from the right side. I'm going to sew across here. Well, actually, I'm going to start sewing from the bottom, and I'm going to sew up and across and down here on both sides so that those vents will stay nice and closed for us. The vent flaps. We'll do that on both sides. Okay, here we're going to sew the vent. I'm just on a straight stitch on my machine. I'm going to lock in at the beginning and the end, and I'm sewing at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance starting from the hem, and I'm going to go up. I have my walking foot on. I generally leave it on. And I'm just going to go up here to that mark. And now I'm going to leave my needle down, raise my foot and pivot. And I'm going to sew straight across there. Let me straighten this out so it's somewhat even here. There we go. Lower my foot. Now I'm just going to bring these little seams together here. I'm going to go over to about 5/8 of an inch. Needle down. And continue to sew down the other side of the vent. Finish up. And here you can see our vent is sewn down. Now I'm going to do the other side, and then I'm going to turn our hem up 1 inch. Now that we are all hemmed, we're hemmed across the back, our vents are beautifully hemmed with the hood. Let me pull this up. I've taken the 2 hood pieces that we cut mirror image and sewed them all around the top, just like you do with any hood. Your hood was like this. You sew this and around the top. And then with right sides together, the center seam of the hood gets matched to the center seam of the robe, or in our case, the cover-up. And then it just gets matched 1 to 1 down to the mark. And now I'm just going to serge that on. Let me show you what we have. Got it around here to the front. I'm going to serge that all on, and then we'll be ready to put on our narrow band. Okay, I thought it would be easier to show you on my friend here. So at this point, we have the hood completely serged on all the way around. The hood is on, and I've attached the band. The band is cut in 2 pieces, sewn on the short end and folded in half, just like a normal band would be. It's attached here at the hood, at the center back, so that your seams line up. And I just have it clipped, of course. And then comes all the way around the front and down to the bottom. Now I'm going to move the camera down to the bottom to show you what I'm going to do. I've decided to make the band a little bit shorter than the hem of our swim cover-up, because I want to make sure I'm not giving that robe feeling. So what I've done is I've taken the band, your fabric was 2 pieces, you sew it together on the short end and fold it over so that it's folded over wrong sides together. That's normal, typical band. And then what I did was I clipped it on, center back seams match at the hood and the notches around the neck, and I've put it on and decided I was going to cut it 2 inches shorter than the hem. And I just think it gives another element of design, takes away that roby feeling. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these ends. I don't have them sewn yet because I wanted to measure and see how much I wanted. But I'm going to sew this. Now, the directions tell you to do this. I'll obviously iron it even. And then sew here and flip the band around so you have a finished edge. And I'll do that on both sides. And then come here, and I'm going to just serge this band on all the way around. Now this fabric, even with the 3 layers, is relatively thin. I mean, it's not a thin fabric, and it's perfect for a swim cover-up because it's mostly cotton. It's got a little absorbency on this side. When I did the original blue robe, that was very, very thick plush, brushed velour on one side and toweling on the other. So think of a nice plush bathroom towel kind of feeling. That was a lot for all of these layers to go through. So I hand basted that on first. Otherwise, it's going to shift on such a very long band, and it's not going to be the outcome that you want. Since I basted that band on first, it came out perfect and lovely. I do not have to do that with this. It's very stable, pretty much like a cotton woven. And it will go through the serger. It won't shift. It'll be just fine. But if you have a thicker fabric, I recommend basting the band on first. Okay. So I'm going to finish this edge, and I'm going to serge the band all the way around using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Remember, I cut this band a little more narrow than the original pattern because, again, I don't really want that robe feeling. And then I'm going to, after this gets serged on, and I'll even it up there, we'll be here. And then I'm going to fold this back here, that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and just top stitch this right here to finish that. Here we have our band beautifully serged on. I've folded it over and pressed the seam allowance towards the body. And if we come down here to the end, I continued to fold over the seam allowance. Now I'm going to top stitch this band where I've pressed the seam, the serge seam towards the body. I'm going to top stitch this all the way around, and that will take care of this folded edge as well. So the stitching will match all the way around. So here I've been top stitching the band on, and I'm keeping that seam allowance towards the body of our swim cover up. And I started at the end, at the one end of the hem, and I'm just going to show you what that looks like when I get to the other side of the hem. So I'm just using my hand to gently make sure that this doesn't overlap or anything. And I'm sewing through this seam allowance. Don't skip the top stitching. It really makes your garment lay nicer, looks more professional, keeps it from flipping out. Okay. I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way for you. I'm lining up my seam with the edge of this walking foot here as a nice little guide. Now here you see we're coming to where the band ends, and I've finished it with the serger, and I folded it over that seam allowance. So when I top stitch all the way to the end, that will also be finished. It's exactly how I started. I started at this end up. Making sure I'm catching that, which I am, and we'll back stitch here. Let's take a look at that. Completely flat, finished off here at the edge. I'll cut those threads, and our band is beautifully top stitched and will lay flat onto the pockets. I have serged the top of the pocket piece just to finish the edge. So when you look into the pocket, it's a nice finished edge. I have also sewn on a piece of interfacing, 1.5 inches wide by the length of the pocket. I've sewn some interfacing to the tops of both pockets. And then I have pressed the pocket over that 1.5 inches towards the right side. Here we have our pocket, interfacing at the top. Raw edges were serged. I have folded this over. It's 1.5 inches to the right side. I am just going to sew from the folded edge to the hem, at our seam allowance. I'll do that on this side and then do it on the other side. And then we'll flip our pocket. Back stitch. Coming over to the other side, I'll start at the bottom hem because I like to have the fabric to my left. Lock in my stitches up to the folded side and then go ahead and lock those in again. Here's the pocket sewn down both edges from fold to hem. And I went ahead and clipped the corners, and now I'm just going to flip this pocket right side out. Flip that pocket right side out. I'll push out the corners. And then you can see where this hem wants to just turn over here on the side. So I'm going to press that down on both sides and across the bottom. Then I'm going to come back and I want to top stitch this pocket. Now let me swap this out. I've already done it on this one. You can see I've pressed the hem up everywhere. I've top stitched the pocket, and I like to do that twice. I think it makes a really nice top of the pocket. And the interfacing is really nice because this pocket isn't going to flop over like here. I don't really like that look. So the interfacing is important, and I like to double top stitch. You can use a wide cover stitch. You can use a decorative stitch here is really nice. My fabric's already printed, so I didn't need to do that. And then I will pin my pockets on. There's no need to sew down these sides because that will get sewn when we sew the pocket to our swimsuit cover up. Here we have our pockets sewn on and they look awesome. Our last step before we hem the sleeves is to create that casing I was telling you about. And we're going to use this bias tape. This is single fold wide bias tape. I like the wide. I want a decent sized drawstring. And this is often used to make casings as well as use it for binding in certain applications. So that's what you want to get. So what I've done is I tried on my swimsuit cover up. I put a string around my waist so that I knew where I wanted the drawstring to be, and I marked it with a pin on each side. And then I measured down from the shoulder seam to make sure it was even on both sides, and mine's about 18 inches, which is a good place for my tie. And then I put it on my mannequin and I marked it in the back as well so it's even and straight and parallel to the floor. So I have those markings here with the pin. And then what I've done is I've taken the double fold bias tape. I've folded over one edge so that it was neat. Opened it up and then folded it back and pressed it. So now I have a finished edge. We are going to sew this bias tape here at the bottom and at the top, leaving the middle open for our casing. And it gets sewn to the inside. Done is I've pinned it on inside, and I've taken my tailor's chalk and I've marked it all along the edge all the way around to the other side so that I know it will be even. We are going to be sewing from the inside of the garment. What I don't want to do is leave these pins in here. Because this is a dolman sleeve, it has some sort of extra fabric. It's, not a straight seam straight down, it curves. So I just want to be able to follow the chalk line and just be able to make sure that no fabric is curling up underneath or bulking up underneath. I want it to be nice and flat. Here, I have not cut it because I want to make sure I didn't cut myself short as I'm sewing along. When I get to the other edge, I'll do the same thing I did on this edge where I'll fold it over, make it very finished and neat and not raw, and sew it to the end. And then you can use whatever you want for your drawstring. If you have enough fabric and you want to make matching drawstring, you can go ahead and do that. You just make a long tie. I really despise turning thin little ties. And I didn't want to do the fold it to the center, fold it to the center, fold it to the center like bias tape because it would be too thick. So I'm going to use some other drawstring that I have around, which will be perfect. Probably like a white little roped drawstring. I don't know that I have any other colors, but white works perfect for me. So let's go over to the sewing machine and begin to sew on our single fold wide bias tape. All right, I have the single fold bias tape under the needle. You can see my markings here, so I keep it nice and straight. I'll just be following here. And I'm going to be sewing at about 1/8 of an inch from this folded edge here. 1/8 of an inch, 1/4, however it works out for your sewing machine. Now the bobbin thread is going to be showing on the front, so make sure you have the right color, neat. But when you pull that drawstring through, you know, that'll cinch up and look nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew the whole way around, following that mark and making sure that I keep my fabric nice and flat. Of course, locking my stitches in beginning and end. I'm going to go slow because I really want to make sure I don't catch any of this swimsuit cover up underneath my fabric, and I want to make sure that I'm following that mark that I made. I'm going to be readjusting very frequently, and I'm above the pocket here, so that won't be interfering. My fabric once again, still following my chalk mark. I'm going to continue that all the way around. Okay, I'm coming around now to the end, to the other side of my band. So I'm just going to continue to sew. I'm going to stop short of this because I want to be able to fold that raw edge under, and then I'll come back and finish that. So remember, I haven't cut this yet because I just wanted to get sewn on first and make sure I didn't come up short. All right, so now that I'm actually on the band, what I want to do is I'm going to cut this about here to give myself a good amount of room. So let's get this out of the way. And now with my needle down, I'm going to open this up and fold this, very hard to do here on film, but I want to fold this under and see where it comes. All right, I've left a little bit too much. I'm going to cut that a little bit shorter, and I would normally take this off of my needle, do it at my ironing board. I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter here. Okay, so take it out of your machine to do this. So now I have the raw edges folded over, and I have it about 1/4 inch shy of the edge of the band, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish this stitch here. And then I'll back stitch. Okay. Just coming back around to the very, very end. You can see this is the beginning where we started. This is the end. Come here and back stitch. There we go. Make sure you're not sewing here. You know, we're so used to sewing up the short end to enclose it, but this will be where our drawstring will now come through. So we're leaving that open. It's time to finish up our swimsuit cover-up. And I'm ready to do my drawstring. So what I've chosen to use is a cotton braided drawstring. Choice is yours. Use what you like. I have some aglets on the end so it stays nice and tight. And I've showed you this before, but I'll show you again. My favorite bodkin is the Clover Clip and Glide bodkin. It opens up like this. You can pop your drawstring or whatever you're doing and lock it down. It is not coming out. I like to put one on each end. I have 2 of them so that it doesn't slip through and I can't retrieve it. I like it because it's flexible and it's very long and it clips. You're never going to lose it. So now what you're going to do, I'm going to turn this over. You're just going to slip this end into your casing and it'll fit. See how that fits? And you're just going to work that all the way through. Okay, you have it all threaded through the casing and it's going to be so cute. If you don't have 2 of these Clip and Glide bodkins, you can put one of these jumbo wonder clips on one end or one of those office clips on the end, anything to keep it from sliding back through your casing. So now I'm just going to release it from the bodkin and I'll pull it here. Look how cute that's going to be around our waist. All right, let's try it on and do some modeling shots. I hope you enjoyed the tutorials. I hope you're excited about this hack and you're ready for the compose robe. Whether you're ready to snuggle up after your bath, at night watching television, warm and cuddly, having coffee on the front porch, you and your guy, you and your girl, you and your kids, whatever, the compose robe is on sale now. Thank you for joining me in the sewing room, as always. And thanks for subscribing to my channel. The subscribe button's below. I hope to see you next time in the sewing room. Happy sewing!